Hello everyone, it's Gladius. Today we're talking about the Ball Lightning Wizard. You've probably seen them everywhere, and there's a reason for that. By far, it's outperforming all other builds in Season 2, Season of Blood, and today we're learning how we can level it up lightning fast. There's a lot to go over, so let's get right into it. First thing, we're talking about our class special, which is the enchantment slots. Enchantment slots for Wizard are pretty standard with level 15. You're going to be using Fireball. Fireball is pretty standard because it's hard to compete with its AoE and clearing ability. Every time an enemy dies, it explodes for Fireball damage, and that's just as if you casted 15 fireballs if you killed 15 small things. Again, hard to compete with that. Our second one at level 30, our second enchantment slot is going to be Chain Lightning. The enchantment slot with Chain Lightning is going to make it so we cast Chain Lightning every time we spend 100 mana. This is going to be helpful because every Chain Lightning bounce is going to restore some mana because of an aspect that we're going to go over later in the video. With enchantment slots covered, we're going to jump into the skill tree. Once again, everybody, the written build is going to be in the description below if you want to click on that. But let's jump right into the skill tree. All right, so the skill build. For the skill build, I'm just going to point out a couple things. I'm not going to prescribe it point by point for you. That's what the path here is for. But let's focus on a couple things. First of all, notice we are maxing Arc Lash in here. I know what you're thinking. Gladius, that's a basic skill. Why would we do that? In the core skill area, notice we're putting 1 point in Fireball and 1 point in Chain Lightning. These are going to be our enchantment slots. And notice we take Chain Lightning early on because until we get Ball Lightning, we're just going to be using Chain Lightning to be able to do damage. We're taking a bunch of defensive abilities. We're taking Teleport, Ice Barrier, and Frost Nova. These cooldowns are going to help refund us some mana with another aspect we'll talk about in just a moment. Frost Nova's vulnerability is definitely very useful. Let's talk about Enhanced Ball Lightning. That node is very interesting for a couple reasons. Mainly, it gets that scaling off of attack speed. We're going to be running a one-hander in Source in this build, and also we're going to be taking attack speed on our gear. We'll get into the gear stats in just a moment. Now, let's talk about... Let's see. Now let's talk about Prime Unstable Currents really quick. Prime Unstable Currents here is going to scale our attack speed, which is again going to help our Ball Lightning do even more damage. The playstyle defining node here is Veer's Mastery. Veer's Mastery? Let me know in the comment section below if I'm pronouncing that wrong. This here is encouraging us to get up in the face of our enemies. We're going to be teleporting right into pack so that we get the additional damage bonus from Veer's Mastery. Then whipping our Clash around is going to help enhance these effects if we get critical strikes. Now when we're up in the fray, Veer's Mastery is going to help us a bit, but we do have to take a couple other defensive nodes to make sure we're not going to get overrun since we are playing up in the middle of everything. All right, let's talk gems. We are doing a lot of basic skill damage, so we're going to use Topaz for our weapon. Next, for our armor gem, we're going to be using rubies. Now, finally, for our jewelry gem, we get a couple choices. First, we can use skulls if we're low on armor, and then we can use diamonds if we're low on all resist. All resist is way more important this season. We need to make sure that we're hitting our cap of 75 resist as we head into harder content. But once you head into Nightmare Dungeons, it's going to become more and more important until you can't ignore it. So for all resist, jewelry is going to have implicit all resist, but also you can gem it as well to help you hit that cap. Now, like we mentioned in the skill tree, Ball Lightning does scale with attack speed. Also, our Arc Lash advance with attack speed as well. Let's talk offense. We love attack speed, we love crit, and we love damage to close enemies. Because notice that it's going to all work with Veer's Mastery and also scaling Veer's Mastery with the enhanced attacks for 3 seconds. Because if you remember, 3 seconds after we crit, Veer's Mastery is going to have an empowered effect. So we want to be up in the fray, critting as much as we can to be able to enhance the damage of our lightning balls. This is another thing that I feel like it's best just to go ahead and read it instead of me just prescribing everything for you. It's in the description below if you want to take a look at that. But just remember, attack speed is really important, even though it's not making more balls fly out. I said what? It still is scaling the damage of each ball as it goes. So you won't have more balls, but each ball will be stronger. Now let's talk defense. We want to get additional damage. Let's talk defense. We're looking to max out those resists. We also want plenty of armor. but also cooldown reduction. We can think of cooldown reduction as a great defensive stat because it's going to enable us to cast our barrier more often, CC targets with Frost Nova, and teleport. Teleport is a huge defensive one because it's going to give us 30% damage reduction after we use it. Teleporting into packs and then unloading our damage. All right, let's go to the aspects because there's a lot to talk about here. For this, I'm going to focus just on offensive aspects. In Diablo 4, as you're leveling up, you can get away with ignoring defensive aspects until you get into Nightmare Dungeons. When you're in Nightmare Dungeons, you're plugging in the gaps of what your character is weak on. So there are a couple things you can take. So just to name a couple, you can take the aspect of disobedience to help with your armor, protector aspect to help you gain a barrier as you're fighting enemies. But when we talk about offensive aspects, those are very important, especially up to 50, but into Nightmare Dungeons as well. But throughout the entirety of your experience, offensive aspects are super important. Diablo 4 in particular is a game that's scaled around damage, which makes it unique from other games like Path of Exile. Here, we really want to focus on our damage output to determine what content we're able to complete. Let's talk about jewelry and your gloves. Running aspect of control in your amulet is great. It's going to help your damage. You're using Frost Nova from the very beginning to be able to get way more damage on enemies. This is going to scale nicely with the fact that you're making them vulnerable every time you use Frost Nova. All right, now let's talk about rings. Prodigy's aspect is going to help you get some mana back every time you use a cooldown. And as we mentioned way long ago, we're going to be using recharging aspect, which is going to make it so that every time Chain Lightning bounces, you're getting some mana back. This thing's bouncing a lot because we're spending a lot of mana with Ball Lightning, and every 100 mana of that, we're going to proc a Chain Lightning, and then per bounce of those Chain Lightnings, we're going to get mana refunded to us. All while Prodigy's is also working to refund mana as we're using cooldowns. And we're up in the fray, so our defensive cooldowns, we're going to be using those constantly. Now let's talk about our gloves. Our gloves are using rapid aspect, and the reason for that is the additional attack speed. We've gone over this before. Attack speed is important for this build. Now, as you're leveling up, you just want to change out your weapon anytime you find an improvement. Same thing goes with your armor. So that's why we don't focus on, and that's why I wouldn't apply any aspects to any other armor piece besides your gloves. You can get away with keeping just your gloves the same all the way as you level up. Oh, back way up, back way up, way up. Aspects. There's one aspect I didn't talk about yet, the gravitational aspect. Gravitational is going to make it so that your lightning orbs are going to orbit around you as you run, and you can have up to a few of them around you even at once. This is going to make us a walking menace where we're going to be able to do a ton of damage to enemies that are around us, especially with Veer's. Veer's Mastery, our Flash procs, and our ultimate ability are all going to work together to create a ton of damage in a closed-in area around you. Now, here's the shame of it. We can't get this aspect on the Codex. I know, it sucks, but we can get this pretty easily if we gamble for sources. Now, the reason why I haven't mentioned this until now is because you don't want to gamble it early. You want to wait until Sacred and above. Now, the reason for that is that to apply that aspect, and again, we're talking about something that's not in the Codex. So we have to be able to extract that Codex. We have to extract that aspect and apply it to something, which we'll probably put it on our source. So with all that in mind, when we extract that, we would get the normal version of it, the normal legendary affix, the normal legendary aspect. We would not be able to apply that to something sacred or ancestral. So we don't want to waste our Obals early. Don't worry about this early on. I know it's a core functioning part of the build that really makes the Lightning Ball Wizard the Lightning Ball Wizard, but you're going to want to wait until post level 50 so you don't waste your Obals. Then you have to go out and do a bunch of those events again. Just wait. You won't regret it because it really doesn't take that long to be able to get to level 50. It's a pretty short run. And again, within a couple hours, I was able to get level 50. You're going to be able to too if you use this build. The next thing we want to get into is the vampiric abilities. The vampiric abilities play a massive part in Season 2. Now, when it comes to getting these, they're going to be random because of the upgrade feature. It's the lottery system, you pay the price, and then you get 3 random ones. But if you do draw Hemomancy early, you will not regret picking this up. This thing has such a wide range, you can off-screen mobs, and it scales incredibly well. So as soon as you can get this to higher levels, I would focus on this one first, bearing in mind that it's a lottery system for how you level them. Hemomancy is great. I really suggest picking that one up. Prey on the Weak is going to help us with doing more damage to vulnerable enemies. And again, we're proccing this every time that we're doing our Frost Nova. 3, Ravenous. This thing's incredible. It's going to have a cyclical nature with our Arc Lash, where Arc Lash is giving us more movement speed, then this is giving us even more attack speed based on our movement speed. So there's a great relationship there with this build. Another big one to try to pick up as quick as you can. Anticipation. This helps get more ultimates out, and your ultimate plays a big role here because remember, it's a steroid. So every time that we use it, it's going to give us the attack speed, which scales our Ball Lightning, which scales our Arc Lash. We're all about attack speed. It's great. 5, we come up to Domination. Domination is going to help us with our CC damage. Again, we're CCing enemies all the time, and that's a big focus of our survivability. So this one is a natural fit to the build. And finally, let's get into the Paragon board. Let's first talk about the glyphs we're going to be interested in. Again, it's random which of these we're going to find first, but I'm just going to talk about the ones that you definitely want to get. Let's talk Adept. That's going to help your mastery skills. And guess what Ball Lightning is? It's our mastery skill. So this is going to help increase the area of effect that your mastery skills have. This is going to have this screen clearing power that you want. So Adept, going to help our mastery skill. Charged is going to make it so we get more damage when we pick up our crackling energy that's going to spawn on the ground. Pretty self-explanatory. We want that damage boost as we're picking up the crackling energy. I don't think we talked about this in the skill tree, but our unstable currents and our wizard Ball Lightning are going to be working in tandem to create crackling energy. Crackling energy is going to appear as orbs on the ground that you pick up and you're able to shoot out and do damage. It's empowered by our unstable currents, and it's created by our Ball Lightning. Just keep an eye out for these, pick them up as you see them. Our third glyph, Control, is going to give us more damage to CC'd enemies, or ones that have an effect. So that's going to empower our damage, and again, we're going to be applying a lot of effects to our enemies constantly. Exploit's going to be additional vulnerable damage. It works with our build because of our Frost Nova procs. Territorial, this one's going to increase the amount of damage we do to close enemies. Again, that's what Veer's Mastery is doing as well, so it works with that. And then also helping us take less damage from enemies, because we are playing a sorcerer up in the front lines, and we are going to take a lot of damage, so this is going to help scale back a little bit of that damage we're going to be taking. Again, Veer's Mastery gives us a little bonus to taking less damage from enemies around us, but this is going to make this even stronger. Destruction. Destruction is going to make it so that every time we get a critical strike, they're going to take more damage. And again, we're fishing for critical strikes as we're whipping around our Arc Lash as quick as we can, and quick damage procs from our Ball Lightning. Attack speed, crit, that's what we're all about in the build, and this is leaning into that pretty hard. Tactician. Now remember, we took a bunch of defensive spells that are working as offensive and defensive at the same time. We're going to be using those all the time, and each time we use one of these, we're going to get additional damage, which again, when we use Frost Nova, for example, we're going to be applying vulnerable to the enemies and then also doing more damage because they're close to us. This is a perfect glyph to go along with it. All right, while we're on the topic of Paragon boards, let's talk about legendary nodes. There's only one, Static Surge. Static Surge works perfectly with our Chain Lightning procs. Remember, that's our enchantment slot. We're not actually casting Chain Lightning. Well, it's an auto cast. So we're going to be able to cast Chain Lightning. It's going to apply vulnerable to everything it hits, and we also get mana refunded per hit. That stacks really nicely with the enchantment effect that does the exact same thing. And also the aspect that does the second part of that as well. So we're going to get a more empowered version of what we're already doing with our Chain Lightning. Whenever that procs, we're just refilling our mana completely up. And then we're just running for glyphs after that. We're just trying to get every glyph we can. Again, the Paragon board's in the description. I'm not going to go walk through every node with you, but take a look there. And then if you have any questions about it, hit me up in the comment section below. All right, everyone, that's going to do it. I hope your Ball Lightning Sorcerer works well for you here in Season 2. And if the video did help you out today, please heroic strike that like button. And if I earned your sub today, please bash the subscribe. And if I didn't, I hope to get it eventually. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.